Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the 40th edition of Coffee with Ashish. And today we've got a very special guest with us from Singapore, Nicholas Lim from the Travel Corporation. And before we get into conversation with him, as always, we always reminiscent the conversation we have had over the past 39 sessions on Coffee with Ashish. And you would agree that we have looked at the various types of products and intermediaries in the travel ecosystem around the world. We've also looked at niche experiences, niche categories. We've looked at tech-enabled companies, who have raised venture funding successfully and have created using new age technologies like AI, IoT, and blockchain itself. But you would realize that in most of these conversations, the organizations we looked at, these were all large global companies that have raised significant institutional capital and have actually caught on to the wave of you know travel growth in the last 3 decades or so. Back home in India, when we talk about some of these companies, you would realize that many of them started off as family-owned businesses, and it was very common in most of the travel intermediaries in India specifically to start off as a small family-owned business, and then eventually some of them, graduated and raised funding and became institutional, professional, organized companies while the others, took the second and third generation didn't find travel industry glamorous enough, and they ventured into various other endeavors. And family-owned businesses, specifically, even world over, you would see that have been they're notoriously uh, thought of as incapable of high growth and becoming large organizations. People often associate, lethargy or unprofessionalism with them, and more so specifically in India when we look at some of these examples. But I think today we are very fortunate to have one organization with us, which has been in business for almost a century now, I would say. And it started off as a family-owned business, and they have managed to take in all the attributes of any large, global MNC or a venture-funded company, but at the same time maintain those ethos of a small knitted family owned business. And if you look at the story of this organization, TTC, or the Travel Corporation, it's really amazing. And I was looking at how it all started with the founder, Mr. Solomon Tolman, who back in 1895 actually started putting in spouting in the roots for this organization. And in the early 1900s, it's a really fascinating story in terms of how he used to travel around, and in one of the fishing villages of Paternoster, he actually spotted one old building which was once a old community center, and he actually saw an opportunity to refurbish this property and create a hotel accommodation property out of it, which was known as later the Paternoster Hotel, which was back in 1920, and in many ways actually also the start of the travel corporation. And the company is still over the, I mean, it's been almost 100 years now, we are sitting in 2020, and the company still is managed wholly by members of the Tolman family. Four generations of the company are actively involved in the organization still. And as always, I've got this time some photographs of the family, just to give you a sense of how it all started, because sometimes we all get into numbers and sort of growth balance sheet, but it's also very interesting to sometimes see the roots of how the organization started. So on the right is Mr. Solomon, who started the organization, and bottom left is the hotel I was talking about in sort of middle of nowhere, and top left is actually the entire Solomon Tolman family now, with four generations. So it's really fascinating to have some sort of a history behind the organization always. And I think it's a really amazing story. And fast forward, if we get into 2020, the TTC now owns 30 travel brands, including tour operators, hotels, transportation companies. It operates in 70 countries and has 40 offices around the world, and it serves 1.9 million travelers annually. And the organization also operates a non-profit affiliate called the Tread Right Foundation, which oversees projects around sustainable tourism in various locations around the world. And the company's, Nicholas Slim is the managing director of the Travel Corporation Asia, and he actually oversees the entire operations of the company across Asia, including Middle East. And he also overlooks various brands in the organization, like the famous Trafalgar, Inside Vacations, Luxury Gold, Uniworld, Cost Saver, Kontiki Holidays, Us About, AAT Kings, Red Incarnation, and the list goes on and on. I mean, in fact, many of the people I speak to, they know these individual brands, but few are aware of the fact that they all, merge into one large organization, which is TTC. And Lim's story is also very interesting. How he got drawn into hospitality and tourism business. As a young 12-year-old boy, when he sought a vacation job in a five-star hotel property during Christmas, and how he actually carried on his initial interest as a teenager, and then followed his passion to complete his degree in hospitality and tourism, and winning various awards and accolades over the years. And then he embarked on a professional journey in the hospitality and tourism space, with first doing sales for an airline, working with travel agents, and then he joined the Travel Corporation through its Inside Vacation brand in 1999 into a sales and marketing role. And over the last 2 decades or so, he has looked after various brand portfolios within the organization. And he, in between, took a break, but then he rejoined TTC in 2005 as Director of Sales and Marketing for Kontiki Holidays. He also is instrumental in setting up the India office of the organization in 2012 and expanded brand's global footprint across the region. And he was also the president of Trafalgar Asia and president of Travel Corporation. And under his leadership, the brand has grown many folds across the world, especially in India and Asia Pacific, which is his focus area. And we are really privileged to have you with us today, Nick. The introduction runs into long, but I don't want to eat up much time. And with this, a very warm welcome to you on our show, Nick, on Coffee with Ashish. And with this, I'm going to hand it over to Ashish to have a conversation with you on how you see this market evolving while I sit back and enjoy my coffee.
Sure, Karthik. Thank you very much for the very thorough introduction. And thank you, Ashish, for the invitation to be here. I mean, we just discussing before the show, what a privilege and honor to be here. And unfortunately, we can't do this in India, but hopefully in the coming months, that reality may be realized at some point, and all of us could be sitting around having coffee or masala tea at some point together.
Yes.
Yeah, but for now, Ashish, over to you.
Thank you. And I look forward to that. But 2020 turns out to be a very significant year, not only for the Travel Corporation, which turns 100 years, but also in view of the pandemic, which is hitting all of us across. So while we talk about significance of 2020, what are your own perspective on global tourism in view of all this?
Well, I mean, lo and behold, I mean, who would have predicted this? And there's no rehearsal for this. There's no playbook that you could fall back on in the past. But I think, if you ask me, Ashish, and where we are now, and in our very different world, and each one of us, and because we are now across the globe, and every country is at varying stages of this pandemic. Some are better, some are not so good. Some have seen a second wave, like the Koreans, and they're fighting for it now, and maybe a little part of Europe as well. So, in various degrees, we are fighting this pandemic. But one thing I can say, I mean, if you read the news every single day, it's doom and gloom. But I can say this for sure, if we were to look back 4 months ago, I would safely say, and I can confidently say, that today we are in a much better position than when we are 4 months ago when this hit us.
Right.
Yeah. So I can imagine when this hit us in Singapore in as early as February. It was right after Chinese New Year. We didn't quite know what hit us, and life goes on, and we had to lock down in March, in April, and May, and then and and we were struggling. But I think from here on, if I look back versus those 4 months ago, I think we are in a much better position, and the world is in a much better place now. I mean, if you look at the various countries and companies that's trying to rush out a vaccine, Russia has done that. The Chinese are quite close to it. Um, Malaysia, for example, if you're a Malaysian, you can you can travel to the UK without being quarantined.
Yeah.
And Kiwis or New Zealanders can come to Singapore, for example, without any quarantine as well. But these are the small little examples that I can safely say that that there's some light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah. And over the few months, of course, there have been discussions about how this has changed the world and changed the preferences for various things. Do you see the travelers' preferences changing over there?
I think here preferences changing in terms of taste. No, I think in terms of destinations, very little as well. But I think what we have seen is a change in conversation. And in my past many years working here in the industry, you always talk about the product, you always talk about the brand you're offering, and eventually, and someone would come and ask you for a deal, which is okay, which is fine, And here in Asia, I think we are a very value driven society, but the last 3 to 4 months, the conversations has been okay. There was no talk of price. There was no talk of price. There was talk of destinations, what I like to do in that holiday. People are exploring 2021 and 2022 already as we speak. We are also getting 2021, 2022 bookings, and all thanks to my colleagues and my partners in India. So forward bookings have been quite encouraging. But one thing that has changed dramatically is a question of confidence. Is okay. So Travel Corporation, you and your brands, Trafalgar, Contiki, Inside, Uniworld, how are you going to take care of me? So the question of safety has risen, and that is something which we all, as responsible companies and brands, we need to address. So in terms of our safety protocols, that's what as TTC we have put in place. For example, on our Trafalgar and our Insight departures and our itineraries, besides your driver and your travel director, you now have a wellness director. So you have someone there who's going to be with you from day one to the very last day, besides the travel director who's going to tell you all about the destination. But you have somebody extra on your departures, taking care of you, making sure you're safe, making sure everything is well distanced, making sure that the hotels and our other partners and suppliers are adhering to local laws. And these are the things that we have put in place for all of our various brands.
Right. I'll get back into the safety angle a bit more in a while. But, and leaving aside, of course, the brands and the values, Trafalgar and Contiki and all your brands bring together in safety. But generally, do you see group travel being affected, people being adverse to not traveling in groups in general?
So we have that. So I think that conversation has risen, and people are a bit apprehensive and I think quite naturally at this stage. People are saying, okay, I want to be in a crowd. And we as a group, we know that this would be one of the key questions that people will be asking.
Right.
So I think, and anticipating this and getting the feedback from our guests and from our partners and our agents, and also from our staff as well. So I think we have pivoted very, very quickly, and I think what we have now are what we call travel bubbles, where if you have um, a group of 12 people. So which something that we get every now and then from India. So example, two or three families would travel together, right?
Right.
So we have so if you have 12 people, if you have 12 people and you travel with us,
Right.
We are able to give you a coach all to yourself. So you don't travel with anybody else that you don't know.
Right. Right.
Yeah, so you have that option. So you have that option if you want to travel within that travel bubble.
Yeah. I see that as a very interesting prospect. Not traveling with strangers, be in your like-minded group. We've already talked about countries opening up and various pipelines. I mean, and it's a question we all get asked all the time. When do you really see things opening up, and what are forecasts in terms of number? So what's the country's pipeline in terms of opening up? How would you summarize it for everyone?
Ashish, I would say that's $1 million question.
Yeah. Yeah. We get we are asked all the time, so nobody better than you to ask that question.
Oh, I think we all have to take it one day as it comes. I think we need to be buoyed and encouraged um, by the small wins, like for example, Malaysia, the UK, New Zealand, Brunei, Singapore, and these are the small wins. And also things like airlines are starting to fly again, and slowly, I think, but surely. Um, my colleagues in the industry, we're saying that maybe it's December, maybe it's January. So, for example, yeah. So there's who knows, but I think the faster we find a vaccine, I think then it will give people a bit more confidence. Um, the world is many experts and many medical experts have said that things won't get back to what they used to until 2022 2023. Okay, fine, but I think slowly, I think there's some recovery. At least there's some light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah, I mean, if you ask me this 4 months ago, I would say Ashish, I have no idea. But I think here on, at least we could set timeframes more or less, looking at what's around us.
Yeah, I liked what you said about appointing well-being directors on the program. In fact,
Yeah.
I was talking to a similar CEO on one of the shows, and I said, look, instead of your title of CEO, I think all of you need to probably become chief safety officers or chief health officers to make sure that you keep your customers safe at all time, because in the end, the buck stops there. If something was to happen, it'll stop on your table. So I quite like this thought of well-being directors, and I going forward, I see companies actually appointing directors who are responsible for that health and safety and hygiene of brands and customers, etc. But while we are talking about that, tell us more about how your brands are keeping people safe across. I mean, and your brands are so diverse, from Contiki being a very young audience brand to maybe Trafalgar or LDD. So how do you cut that across?
Okay, so I think so here, Ashish, you are one thing. It starts with, and that starts with the customer, and I think that's something that we've heard, and customers' concern and safety. That's something that we've been hearing very regularly and almost constantly every day.
Yeah.
And I think we need to address that. I think so. How are we going to? So based on that, I think we need to address safety and we also need to address uh, consumer confidence as well, and also the confidence of the trade and our partners. So I think, so for a start, so what we do across the whole entire brand is additional measures, things like sanitizing the whole entire coach, the whole entire fleet of coach whenever we use them. Things like we have hand sanitizers on board our coaches. They used to be there, but no one actually used them until of late, and you see the significance of that. Our staff, our road crew, travel director, and drivers, they need to, we have to test them before they even get on a coach. So that's something that we as a company that we are doing. We're making sure that everybody is safe. But also, I think in turn, Ashish, what is in the current world that we live now, we also have to communicate very closely and put the responsibility to our customers as well, that if you are not well, don't come. So I think each and every one of us, not just as a business or a tour operator, have the responsibility, but I think each and every one, if we want to keep this pandemic at bay and see it and get it done and over with, I think each and every one have to play. So I think besides all we do, and we communicate this in all our various websites and all our various web pages across brands, but we also say explicitly that you as or anyone, as a customer, if you need to exercise personal responsibility as well. If you're not well, stay at home. So that's something which we have done as well. Yeah. So it's both ways. It's on our part, and as much physical cleaning and distancing and all that we could do, and working with the authorities in the various countries to ensure that we abide by their respective laws, that the hotel, that the tables at the hotels that we use are clean, that the beds that we use at our hotels are clean. I think our travelers also need to have that responsibility as well.
Yeah, I think honest approach is the best way. I mean, be very honest with your customers. And but there've been talks of course, consumer confidence, and obviously confidence comes across both economically and hygienic angles. But if you mix both across globally, it's pretty much shattered. How would you sort of think it should be within the industry across be built up?
Well, I think as an industry, Ashish, I think one thing that we do, and I think we need to do more, is to communicate very regularly with the public on our protocols and how we're doing things, and on a very regular basis. So we just cannot do a video and say, oh, okay, this is done. But I think through every stage, we need to communicate very effectively and very consistently with the consumer, and say what we are doing as companies, what we're doing as an industry, be it cruise, be it if you're a tour operator, be it an airline. I think we need to do it on a very regular basis if we want to have consumer confidence back on our planes and our ships and on our coaches, on our tours. Again, I think we need to have we need to do this very regularly. And furthermore, if we have the help of governments to use this to support this as well, that's going to help. So, for example, if you go to the WTTC website, they have they have a recovery type of dashboard. You could go there, you could see what people are searching, what people are saying. So I think I urge each and everyone here, I mean, if you're in the industry and or otherwise, go to WTTC.com. There's a recovery dashboard that you could see, and how various countries are recovering from this pandemic.
Right. The other thing is, of course, everybody globally and as well as in India very effectively say that this pandemic has actually accelerated the technology and digital footprint across in terms of distribution, in terms of consumptions and behavior. In fact, in India itself, they're saying what the internet penetration, which were forecasted to have hit in 2022, has actually happened now. We've sort of caught up with it. And in many, in education and distributions, obviously is going to hit the e-commerce industry in the same manner. And travel is an important aspect. So how do you see your distribution model changing across globally and in India? Do you see
Well,
major changes there?
well, I think for sure. I think technology has changed, has fast forward many things. This pandemic has fast forward many things in when it comes to technology. I think the fact that we are sitting here
Yeah,
and not having that physical cup of coffee together,
right.
I think says it all.
Yeah,
But also, I think how we have adapted as a company is now we are well. We used to have many customers who wants to sit with us and have that cup of coffee and have a chat over their holidays and their itinerary and things like that. So they will seek our help for that. But I think from here with this pandemic, we've adapted. And now we are doing video calls with our customers. Our customers can then book a slot with one of our sales managers or our consultants, and then we would arrange a video call. We will still walk through the itineraries and the product and whatever questions that they want to ask, but we'll do it virtual now. And I think, well, thank goodness for technology. We certainly embrace it, so I think our customers now, and definitely the industry, is more open to technology. So I think this is, well, you could say a blessing in disguise, that we are using technology to adapt.
yeah. Lastly, I have to mention about this foundation you have, which Karthik mentioned. With a couple of my guests who have been tour operators, they've been talking about responsible tourism, ecotourism. And in fact, a couple of guests actually suggested that there should be a protocol that the tour operator should make sure that his guests carry the trash back into their country rather dumping it in the hillside, right? But I was thoroughly impressed. I did some reading on this foundation, and recently a large amount of donation has been made, even in these times, towards this from this foundation. Do tell us how your group and TTC works towards this responsible tourism
Sure.
spread across the world.
So we've got a foundation, and it's called Tread Right, and it's about giving back, to people, culture, and planet. And these are the three pillars that we embark on. And so I'll give you an overview of how we work, as Tread Right, because the owners of TTC have always had this belief of giving back to the world, and especially to places where we travel. So we don't do the rule of thumb is we don't write out a big check to an NGO or anything, which is we do it, which is sometimes we do on the on and off. But I think a large part of it is where we go down into the micro communities. So let me give you an example. We will integrate these micro communities into our itineraries. So, for example, if you were to go to Italy with Trafalgar, so we would go into a micro community. We would say, okay, this is the last weaver here in Florence, and some of the proceeds that we bring her, that we go and visit, and then some of the proceeds will go to help her retain that skill, retain that craft. So these are the things that we give back to the community. So these are so we make sure that the dollars, in short, we make sure that the dollars go right down to the people that needs it most. So these are, so that's something which, that's our formula, that's our rule of thumb, and how we operate. And in future, you will be able to see we're doing a lot more of these in all of our itineraries, where you're able to give back to the community in one way or another.
Right. And it's so good to have the traveler see it for himself where his money is going when we
Absolutely.
introduce him to the community.
Yeah. So because our travelers make a direct impact on the lives of these communities, and it's not just a check and then you come back a year or two later and pray that things have changed. No, but every dollar that goes into these communities go directly to help them. So that's the part where I feel is super important, and what we're doing has made a direct impact on these projects.
Right. With that, thank you very much, Nick, for being here with me today. And I hope to catch you with that chai or coffee more physically soon enough. But I'll pass you to Karthik, who might have an audience question or something from his side to conclude.
Thank you, Ashish. Looking forward to the coffee.
Looking forward to it, indeed, of course. Over to you,
Thanks,
Karthik.
Ashish. Yeah, lovely listening to you, Nicholas. I just have one parting thought, because many of our audience members typically tend to be startup. In fact, mix of both. Some of them are startups, and some of them are small, old, family-owned travel agency businesses. Do you have any? And in fact, third category of audiences are people who want to do something using technology and want to associate with traditional businesses in the ecosystem. So do you have any small one piece of advice for all these three categories: startups, people who have ideas but are still tinkering with it, and small family owned businesses who are in traditionally in the travel business for long?
Okay. So one of the key things that has gotten Travel Corporation to 100 years is that you need to look after your customer. Okay, and really look after your customer. So there's this story, very quickly, about our chairman Stanley Tolman when he was running his own hotel in South Africa, and across him was another competitor hotel, and that competitor hotel was had queues and always full. And in his restaurant, he had two people. So do you know what his father said to him? Don't worry about those guys across the hotel. Worry about these two. They are currently in your hotel.
Mm.
And you take care of them. And that's how, and from 2 to 4, 8, 16, and that's how we got in. So somehow, so we have always put the customers at the heart of all we do. And, and so far, Travel Corporation is 100 years. And we believe if we continue to do that, I think we'll see another 100 years.
Great. So I think that's a powerful message for everyone. That doesn't matter how big your pie is, just focus on whatever you have and give them the best experience. So I think it's a very powerful thought. Thanks, Nick, for sharing. And with this, we are at the end of today's session. Thank you once again, Nick, for joining us. Really appreciate it. Thanks, Ashish, as always. Thank you, everyone who have joined us on Facebook Live and Zoom. And we look forward to seeing you again on Thursday. Till then, stay safe. Thank you, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Karthik. Thank you, Ashish. Thank you.
Bye-bye, Nick. Bye.